What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Everything you need to know for week 4. I'll be going over a bunch of different injury situations to keep an eye on, as well as the best and worst wide receiver cornerback matchups of the week. But first, gotta start things off like always with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was through 3 weeks, which starting quarterback had the worst red zone completion rate? The answer is Matthew Stafford, and Kevin Kukla was the first to get that one right. Today's stat: among running backs who have played in all 3 weeks so far, who has the most rushing yards over expectation per carry? Okay, let's start off with the postponement news, not even just injury. And we've got Steelers at Titans. That game will not be played this week. They haven't confirmed their exact plans yet, as of recording this at least, but the most likely outcome seems to be both teams are going to have a bye this week, and then they'll make up that game in week 7. I believe the Titans had a bye in week 7. Steelers had a different bye, but they're moving their bye to now and then moving that game into week 7. That is hopefully the only thing that's going to happen for the season, but let's be honest, more things are going to happen, so we need to be adaptable. If you play on Sleeper, you can move players from these games into your IR spot. That's a decision that they made. I do not know what every single site is going to do. If you're in a league that doesn't even have an IR spot, which I know a lot of you are, you're just going to have to treat it like a bye week. But it's going to be depending on the site that you play on. ESPN could do it differently than Yahoo, could do it differently than NFL. So make sure you check, because they're already not playing this week. And so if you have a player from this game and you're allowed to put them in the IR spot, you get a free ad. And so you should take advantage of that and make sure you get someone onto your roster, either to help you get a start this week or just an upside play in case something happens. Maybe you hit on a player you wouldn't have had before. So make sure, first off, you just get those players out of your lineup, because they're obviously not going to score this week, but also check if you can put them in IR and then make a waiver move if you can. Working off that, the Vikings at Texans game, as of right now, looks like it is going to play. There have been no positive tests on the Viking side. That could change later on Friday, could change on Saturday, on Sunday morning. So pay attention to this one. Always pay attention, because it could happen to any team, but obviously the Vikings are the most likely team since they played the Titans last week. But as of right now, it looks like in that game, we're going to be good to go. So now on to the injuries. We've got Davante Adams was limited in practice on Thursday, and it seems like he's going to play this week. Remember, he missed last week with the hamstring injury. The tough thing is the Packers play on Monday night, right? So given that this is such a good game environment, we talked about this game in the running backs video I did on Thursday, how this could be the highest total game on this season. I think you almost have to take the chance. We're going to learn more on Friday night. We're going to learn more Saturday, Sunday as to what they're thinking. But as of right now, it seems like he's going to play, and I think you just have to take that chance. As always, pay attention to the latest reports, and if you can, try to get Marquez Valdez-Scantling on your team. We know that Alan Lazard has the core muscle injury, and so he's out indefinitely. So they don't have very many wide receivers. Adams is going to go off if he plays, but get maybe one of their backup wide receivers onto your roster just in case Adams ends up being out. You have someone you can play. George Kittle also looks like he's going to play this week. They've had 2 pretty easy matchups in back-to-back weeks, so they didn't need to rush him back. Nothing has been confirmed as of recording this, but it looks like he's trending in the right direction. And if he is out there, you're playing him. They're not going to rush him back and play him as a decoy. If he's playing, he's good to go. So trust that and get him into your lineups. Julio also looks like he will return this week. He missed last week with a hamstring injury. But it seems like, given that he has returned in limited fashion to practices, he should be able to play. Again, Falcons take on the Packers in the highest total game of the season so far, but it's on Monday night. And so it's a very difficult one if he ends up being out. But again, good idea to add one of their backups in case he's not able to play. You at least have someone. But I think he's going to play, and I think it is worth the risk, assuming, of course, that we don't learn something on Saturday that indicates he's closer to doubtful. But as of right now, I would be putting him into lineups. Michael Thomas has also been practicing. He isn't a lock to play, but this one is pretty easy. They face the Lions at 1 o'clock on Sunday, so you're going to know for sure at 11:30. They're going to release the injury report. You're going to know if he's in or out, so all you have to do is pay attention to that and make your decision. I think he's going to play, but since we know there's no reason to speculate, this is another situation. They're not going to rush him back. So if he's not, I'm not going to say 100%. He's not going to be 100%. But if he would only be a decoy, they're going to hold him out. There's no way they bring him back and play him as a decoy. If he's back, you need to trust that he's good enough to put up numbers. And so I would be starting him if he's active. Jared Cook does not have that same outlook as Michael Thomas. I'm very interested to see if he does practice on Friday, but he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, so things aren't looking great. So you should probably make a plan just in case he ends up being inactive, which honestly seems like it's going to be the case. So try and add a tight end off free agency you trust. Odell was limited on Thursday with a back injury. Assuming he practiced on Friday when you're watching this, I wouldn't worry too much. But if he misses practice or he remains limited, then we're going to need to watch his status closely. But luckily, they're another team that plays at 1 o'clock, so we will know on Sunday morning. Same thing with Kareem Hunt. He's got a groin injury. Seems like he is going to try and play. And if he does, remember this spot is fantastic. This is a very high-scoring game. Dallas does not have a great defense. And so if he is playing, you're starting him in the lineup unless we get news of a snap count. But I really don't think we're going to. If he's out there, I think he's going to play his normal snaps. Calvin Ridley missed practice on Thursday. But they don't play until Monday. So technically, this is their Wednesday practice. And sometimes the whole player's out on the Wednesday practice. I'm not overly concerned on this one, assuming that he returns on Friday. If he doesn't practice on Friday, then I definitely would be concerned. But watch this one. Again, Monday night game. You've got to make a plan. And you might just have to play someone on Sunday if it looks like he's going to miss. But I haven't heard anything that indicates he's at a severe risk of missing the game. Cam Akers is going to miss another week, or at least it's very likely he's going to miss another week. Henderson took over Brown as the lead back, and he looked just like we thought he would last season. Last year, he was behind Gurley on the depth chart. He suffered the ankle injury. But this season, it looks like a potential breakout. Again, it's only week 3, or at least it has only been week 3, 3 weeks that we've seen him. So we still do have a lot to learn, but things are looking up for Henderson for sure. And I would feel comfortable this week playing him as running back 2. I believe I have him as running back 15 right now. That'll fluctuate, but as a mid-range running back 2, that's how I like him this week. And I am starting him in the league that I have him. Chris Godwin is going to miss another week. This is a different injury. So we had the concussion before. Now he's got a hamstring injury. He's definitely out this week. He might also miss week 5. So you might need to find a long-term solution to him being out. It would boost the value of Scotty Miller, but he's also working back from hip and groin injuries. And there's a chance that he doesn't play. So they're very thin at receiver. Honestly, if Scotty Miller is out there, he's not a bad player to put in the flex. And since we will know at 1 o'clock, we're going to find out beforehand. But yeah, Scotty Miller, if you lost Godwin for these next 2 weeks, then, Scotty Miller is probably on free agency in a lot of leagues. He's not a bad player to pick up, and then you just keep playing him while Godwin's out. But of course, you can't do that if Scotty Miller is also out, so pay attention to that one. DJ Chark has been limited at practice. It seems like he's got a good chance of returning this week. If he returns to be a solid flex play, not someone that we're just jamming into lineups. The Bengals have actually limited wide receiver production a lot. And before the injury, he didn't have that same sort of volume we were hoping he would have. That could, absolutely change. Maybe it was just more of a fluke that he wasn't super involved in weeks 1 and 2, because again, very small sample size. But he just isn't someone that once he returns, I'm have to get him in there. He's really more of a flex play right now until he shows that he's a little bit more valuable in fantasy. I posted a pinned comment on Thursday's video, but for those of you who did not see that, it does not look like Leonard Fournette will be playing this week. That means that Ronald Jones and LaShawn McCoy will see most of the work, with Jones being the one that you want in fantasy. I would not be starting McCoy regardless. The Bucs are 7-point home favorites. But the Chargers have a really solid run defense and really good defense overall. They're really good in the red zone at limiting yardage, limiting scoring. So this isn't just some lock and load play as Ronald Jones, but I would project that he's going to be in like roughly the later teens, I guess, for running backs. I haven't seen all projections so far, but that's what it kind of seems like. He's going to be like a low-end running back too. In a better matchup, I would say, given that he's playing with Tom Brady, who likes to throw dump-offs, given that they are still going to score probably into the mid-20s, I would say against a different team, we're just pretty much playing him regardless. It'd be unlikely that you have three better options. But given that they are playing a very difficult opponent, I can see it if you want to bench him. So if you have like three running backs or maybe two running backs and a wide receiver that you really do prefer over Jones, I'm perfectly comfortable just keeping him on the bench even though he's a starter now. But I know for a lot of people, we've got these two teams on the surprise bye. We've got a bunch of injuries. And of course, running back is already a very scarce position. So if you're in a situation where you need someone, I think Ronald Jones is the guy you can trust as like a mid to low end running back two this week. That's enough of the news though. Let's move on to the matchup. So this week we're going to start off with the good and then we're going to transition into the bad. So first up, we've got DK Metcalf versus Xavier Howard. This is a matchup that I went over in week 2 when the Dolphins played the Bills. And I said that you need to play Stephon Diggs no matter what. I did not care what wide receivers you had. Diggs needed to be in your starting lineup. And then he went out and caught 8 balls for 153 yards and a touchdown. People hear the name Xavier Howard and they get scared because he did used to be really good. And he was a player we kind of avoided. But that's not the case anymore. This is a spot that we're going to be looking to attack every week, especially because this game has a much closer spread than I anticipated. Most people are going to assume that Seattle is just going to absolutely stomp the Dolphins, and that could certainly happen, but the spread is surprisingly only 6.5 points. It's less than a touchdown with a total up at 54. Fitzpatrick's at home, and Seattle has been torched by wide receivers all year, so it's very possible that the Dolphins are able to keep this game close, and that's obviously a good thing for the Seahawks wide receivers. You know, if they were up by 20 points at half, well, they don't need to throw the ball as much, and that's going to limit their upside. But if Fitzpatrick's able to keep this game, you know, within a score for most of the time, then oh my goodness. I mean, the upside on everyone in this game. I know I'm highlighting Metcalf, but like you're starting Metcalf, you're starting Lockett. I have both of them inside the top 6 for wide receivers. I think you got to make it a point to get Parker into your lineups. I mean, Seattle's allowing 73.2 points per game to opposing wide receivers this season, which is 24.5 points per game more than Dallas for the second most. So they are just getting absolutely roasted, just ripped apart by wide receivers this season. So you're starting Parker. I think you can start Preston Williams in the flex if you need to. You know, in a 10 or 12 team league, I'd say it's unlikely you need to, but absolutely you can start him in a 14 team league. And if you're desperate in a 12 team league, listen, Seattle cannot defend wide receivers, and Preston Williams is good, so he could definitely have a good game. But regardless, you need to start Metcalf, Lockett, and Parker because they're very likely to just all go off. Next up, we have Kenny Golladay versus Marshawn Lattimore, although maybe Lattimore doesn't play this week because he did miss practice on Thursday. If Lattimore is out, then it obviously remains a good spot for Golladay. But I wanted to go over this one because even before hearing about this injury, I think people were going to look at the matchup and they were going to say, oh no, Galladay's playing Lattimore, I can't play him. PFF has Golladay with the second biggest matchup advantage on the week, and that's mostly because obviously Golladay is good, but Lattimore has been fairly mediocre this season. He's allowed 10 of 12 targets to be completed for 155 yards and multiple scores, including 8 completions on his last 8 targets over these last 2 games. And so that's contributed to his 40.4 coverage grade, which ranks 129th out of 147 corners. You know, and among quarters who have played a bunch of snaps, 150 or more, he's 57th out of 59. So if you own Golladay and you see, Lattimore's final status is that he's active, don't get scared off. He hasn't been that great this season, and Golladay is really good. He did not suffer a setback last week. The Lions are at home. 54-point total is massive. And if Lattimore is out, then it's an even better spot, and you absolutely need to play Golladay. I think he's a wide receiver 1 this week, and so you got to be playing him. Another receiver I'd make sure to start is Cooper Kupp. He lines up in the slot 60% of the time, and when he does that, he'll be going up against 4th-round rookie Darnay Holmes. Holmes has allowed a 75% completion percentage, an insanely high 2.1 yards per route covered, and that's 5th among all corners this week, and his coverage grade is 138th out of 147. Plus, the Rams' implied total is over 30 points, and so his usually, I'd say relatively low touchdown upside is boosted. If the Rams are going to score into the 30s, there's going to be touchdowns. And Cooper Kupp, like I said, he doesn't usually have a massive touchdown ceiling. Well, he's got a ceiling in this one. And so in general, Cooper Kupp is more of a wide receiver 2, more of someone that it wouldn't be unrealistic to think you could bench in a matchup that isn't amazing. But this week, he's a top 10 wide receiver. And so there's no way you're benching him, I guess, unless you have 3 other top 10 receivers, in which case, I guess, good for you. That's it for the starts. Let's go over some wide receivers with poor matchups. And the first one up is Allen Robinson. We went over last week how Robinson had one of the best matchups, but things are not exactly the same this week. The Colts have an elite pass defense this year. They're allowing just 27.9 points per game to wide receivers, including just 7.7 points per game to opposing wide receiver 1s. They held Chark to 3 for 25, Thielen to 3 for 31, and allowed only 168 total passing yards to the Jets. The Colts have also allowed the fewest points per game in the league at just 15 points per game, while allowing by far the fewest passing yards per game at just 132. This is not a good spot for Allen Robinson or really Anthony Miller, and so I would try and find better options this week. Next up, we have Darius Slayton. It might seem like a sneaky spot for him because the Giants are just massive road dogs, so they're likely going to be playing in garbage time. I mean, for most of this game, they're going to be trailing. They're going to be in obvious passing downs. They're probably going to have to throw the ball a ton. But Slayton isn't really a possession receiver. He's mostly someone who gets a lot of his value off of deep targets. And so that's fine. It's someone that I do like playing in the flex. I like playing players like him who have a relatively low floor, but a huge ceiling that can win me a week, as opposed to someone who's pretty much just always going to go out there and get me 5 for 50. But this week, I mean, he plays Ramsey, and Ramsey's allowed only 5 receptions, more than 20 yards since 2019. And so it's also fairly unlikely that Daniel Jones is going to have a lot of time to get off a deep target. The Giants have the biggest week 4 offensive line disadvantage, allowing the 5th highest pressure rate. And then the Rams obviously are pretty good at generating pressure. He's the type of player that does only need one play. And given that Ramsey, I think, is unlikely to shadow him, there's a chance. If Ramsey's only on him like 70, 80% of the time, well, that's 20 to 30% of the time that he's not going to have Ramsey, that he could hit on a big play. But I think it's very thin. I don't think that this play works out more than 50% of the time. And so on average, I think that he's not going to benefit your team, in which case I personally would avoid it. Aside from those two, there aren't a ton of names you should be avoiding this week. Watkins does have a tough matchup against Gilmore, so I know he's been really good when active, and so a lot of people will look towards him. I just wouldn't. I mean, Gilmore is a really good corner. I know Metcalf beat him, but Metcalf's better than Watkins, and I know Mahomes can literally rip apart any defense, but I would think it'd be more the ancillary players. I really don't think Watkins is going to routinely get open against Gilmore. On the other side of that game, N'Keal Harry has a tough matchup against Snead. So honestly, I would just avoid both of these two. But again, you're probably not playing Harry unless you're in a 14-team league anyways, and so just avoid him. So those are the injury situations you need to keep an eye on, as well as a few players who have good and bad wide receiver cornerback matchups. If you want to make your life easier and just see my exact rankings on all players, you can do that at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. that's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? But thanks for watching.